Okay, quick sanity check. So far what I've done is I went ahead and created my custom interfaces with my custom message interface and my custom service interface. And now I'm going to implement them into my display and monitor nodes. Okay, so I think the best place to start with that is right here with the monitor node. And start with the easier of the two interfaces, which would be the message. I want to more or less replace that with my custom message. Alright, so that said, I do know I want to go ahead and I'm going to import my custom interface. And I'm going to start with my custom interface message, and from that I'm going to import battery status. I don't believe it's going to auto-populate, but it did. So, alright, so I'm going to import battery status, which means now everywhere that I reference string, like so you can see I just referenced it there, and I think it's just those two spots. I'm going to need to replace it in those two places. I'm going to leave that there for now. It doesn't hurt anything, and then I can always go back. But for now, let's replace my string with my battery status. Okay, so that means now I'm working with this instead of string, which also means I have a different set of properties that I'm going to be working with down here. When I was working with the built-in string from standard messages, my only property that I had available was data, whereas now I have hardware status message and a boolean, which is plugged in. So I want to set it up so that way I can send them over. I already have a string written, so I can simply just change this to my hardware status message. Alright, excellent. Now, the next thing I want to also send over is going to be my boolean value. So might as well grab that and set that, and it's going to be, as you can tell, the same value as the object value is plugged in. So let's send that over as well. Is plugged in, and then we could set that equal to the object's value. So every time we send a message, it'll just get this current value, whatever it is. And then, just like before, we'll just simply publish the message. Let's jump over here. We got to make a few changes in here to be able to receive this new service that we're sending over. And the first change that we need to do is we need to import it. Or I need to import it. So, from, and like before, wherever I reference string, which I think this is the only one, I have to update that to be battery status. It's still going to be the same channel. I'm still going to do the same callback. Only difference is instead of logging message data, I want to log message hardware status message. And then also I want to incorporate this boolean value. And just an easy way to do that would be maybe to change my output, like my log. So like before, we were talking about how I can log in different color accents based on whether it's an info, warn, or error. So maybe when it's charging, I'll just have it log in a warning. So it's got a color accent, more or less, just so that way I can incorporate the is plugged in boolean value. Jump back over here, and what I'll do is if not message dot is plugged in. So what I'm saying is if it's not true, I want to do a log in basically the white context, and then I'll say otherwise, or else in other words, we'll just simply log the same thing but only as a warning. So that way it's going to be white and yellow. If it's not charging or if it's false, it'll be white, and then if it's true or charging, it'll be yellow. One thing I just want to double check, I just wanted to make sure I did indeed include it over here. We want to make sure that we include our custom interfaces just like we do everything else. Let's open up some terminals and try running some of these nodes and seeing if we get this new log message. I'm going to go ahead and just do a quick build of the custom interface packages since I made changes. I shouldn't need to, but let's just do it anyway. Or not custom interfaces, the Larry controller package. So that way, just to make sure. Okay. So now I'm just going to open up a couple of more terminals. I'm going to leave this one as a working terminal, and then these three will be to fire up my my 3 nodes that I'm going to work right here. So let's start with, I guess, just, it doesn't really matter what order I fire them up in, so let's just go right through them. ROS2. Oops. Alright, well, we're getting logs. I guess the big thing to wait and see is if it turns yellow when this turns to true, which it should do that any second now. Well, look at that. Looks like we've got it working on our first try. No errors. It looks like everything's still functioning as it should. These logs should be the same. The only log that we really changed was this one, and all we actually changed was how we were accessing it and the fact that we can now change its color based on whether it's charging or not. Okay, let's go ahead and shut these down. Okay, so the next thing that we should probably do is incorporate our service. Okay, so I'm going to ultimately be replacing add to ints with my set battery level, and the same thing in my monitor status node. I think best plan, or the easiest plan for me, would be to start in my server node. So more or less I know I'm going to be sending over the battery status. I know I'm going to also be doing increments of 10, whether that's positive or negative. And I also will be sending over the is plugged in status, so basically a Boolean true or false. And that's going to be how I tell whether or not I'm going to be doing positive 10 or negative 10. And then I'll be returning the new status, which is going to be an integer. With that said, I can go ahead and get right into this. I know I'm going to go ahead and import my own service. Okay, I know I'm going to come down here and I'm going to replace every instance of add to ints, which is just this one, with my set battery level. I am going to change the name of my callback function just so that way it makes a little bit more sense. Okay, and I'm gonna get rid of all of this except for the fact that I'm gonna be returning my response, because I do know if I don't return a response it's gonna throw an error. So that's the, guaranteed. I always want to do that. I also know inside my request I'm gonna have these 2 values available to me. So what I can do is I can start with doing my conditional. I'm going to see if it's plugged in, and then I'll adjust the battery level accordingly. So if, we'll do it the same way as before. If not, it's going to be request So basically, if not request is plugged in, the next thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to adjust my response new status, or I'm going to want to, set my response new status to the, battery status adjusted based on this value. Just to give it some clarity, I'll just write it out so we could see it. So basically, since I'm only going to have two possibilities, and that's going to be if it is plugged in or if it's not plugged in, I'm just going to do an if else just like before. And basically, if it's not plugged in, I'm going to set my new status, my response new status, to be equal to my request battery status minus 10. Otherwise, same thing, but plus 10. And we will return the response. Okay, so I was just thinking about the best way to go about incorporating our new server or service into our actual project, and I think the best thing I could do, or the best way I could start for me to best approach this, is to start with the actual client call itself. So again, I know I'm going to be replacing this with my own service, so I'll start with that, importing my own. So actually what I'm going to do is put it up by my other one. And then I'll come down here and I'll replace every instance of add to int with set battery level. We'll leave it on the same channel. We'll still check to see if the server's running, and if it's not, we'll still warn that the server is unavailable. We won't be using those two properties, but we are still going to be setting our request just the same. So now basically what it more or less means is we'll have, instead of request.a, request.b, we're going to have request.battery status, request.is plugged in. So let's get this added. Okay. So basically what I'm doing is I'm setting my request.battery status equal to my self.status. So every time that this service is called, I am going to collect this current data, or this current status, and this current is plugged in value, and pass it forward to the server as it's expecting it. One thing I want to do real quick too before I forget is I want to give this again an appropriate name. I'm not going to worry about adjusting it up there because we're going to rewrite all of this because we don't need to adjust the battery status anymore. So I'm going to leave that alone for right now, but definitely I'm going to update this name to something a little bit more appropriate. Okay, so now we're still going to use our future object. We're still going to do our async call and pass in request. We're still going to do it. We're still going to add our add done callback to the future object. These arguments we actually don't have anymore. And we're actually not even going to use them anymore. Oh, I don't know what we're not even going to use them anymore, so we're going to go ahead and remove them, which means we actually don't need this partial tool anymore. So we could just actually call the callback directly. Down here we're going to go ahead and drop these two arguments, which means we can't use them in our... Okay, so we do want to actually... I changed my mind, sorry. I do actually want to use my partial, and I am going to pass an argument forward because... And I'll explain why in just a second. Okay, so basically I added this back in so that way as kind of like a safety precaution, because I'm going to be ultimately updating the status. I know I could log before I technically update it, but like I said, it's kind of like a safety step. I'm going to store the current battery status in a argument called old status, and I'm going to pass it forward into my callback. So now I'll have to use that down here, or add that in down here, and I can then now call it right here. Perfect. Okay, so now we also know that we're not going to have res.sum available to us anymore. What we're going to need is new status. So we can go ahead and add that in there also. Where were we? Okay, so up here we got to actually call the server, and then I believe that's all we actually have to do now, because at this point we're not, oh, we'll still have to do this down here, but this bit we should be able to just replace with call set battery server. Okay, quick sanity check. Okay, so every time we call that function, what's going to happen is we're going to do a server call, and inside this server call is where we're going to actually make our adjustments, and then that'll return the new value back, and then we take that new value and we're going to update our current status with that new value. And then after it does that, it's going to check the status, and if it's less than or equal to 50, it'll make it true. If it's greater than or less than or greater than or equal to 200, it'll make it false. Okay, so theoretically I believe this should work. I guess the next thing we should do, we can go ahead and I guess we can go ahead and do a build, and then we can go ahead, source it, although we shouldn't need to. Create 3 more terminals. Let's run our terminals, or our nodes, and see what happens. We're not getting any logs over here, probably because I deleted the logs, but I do see that it is working over here. I just want to create a log so that way I can verify that it's using my new battery level server. So let's go ahead and shut these down. I'm going to just go ahead and delete these. Clear that terminal. What do I want to do? I want to update this. So yes, I did actually, I don't have it doing any logs whatsoever. Just to verify that I am getting something from this, why don't we go ahead and drop below this, and regardless what the status is going to be, we can go ahead and just do this kind of a log. Okay, let's try this one more time and just make sure. See if we're getting our new log. Okay, yep, we're getting our new log just as we wanted. So we actually are complete. We created a custom interface. Well, actually, we created 2 custom interfaces. We created a custom message interface and a custom service interface, or topic, I should say, topic interface and a custom service interface. And we incorporated them into our project. And we actually don't need these pre-built interfaces anymore. So we can go ahead and remove them. from our project entirely. Alright, well that's just about all I have for today. If you like this video, if this video has helped you in any way, or even if this video has just simply encouraged you to take on some new goals of your own, go ahead and smash that like button. If you want to follow along and see where my build goes next, hit that subscribe button so that way every time I post a new video you won't miss out. Until next time, stay happy, stay coding.